Have you ever, stopped to think about how much of our lives we kind of just spend on autopilot?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Not, literally, of course,
Yeah.
but, you know, in our thinking, our reactions, even, our most deeply held beliefs.
Yeah.
It's almost as if we're not really engaging with the world.
Right.
Like, we're just running these pre-programmed responses.
Yeah.
We'll get ready to ditch the autopilot because in this deep dive, we're going to be exploring this whole concept of the mechanistic mind.
Hmm.
And we're doing it with insights from the philosopher J. Krishnamurti.
Oh, cool.
Our source material for this is actually public dialogue of his from back in 1975.
Okay.
And honestly, I have to admit, I was a little skeptical at first.
Really?
Yeah, 1975. But trust me, his ideas about how our minds get conditioned are so surprisingly relevant even today.
Yeah, I think what's so fascinating about Krishnamurti is that he just had this way of cutting through all the noise and getting right to the core of the human experience.
hmm
And he doesn't sugarcoat things. He really challenges us to examine the very foundation of our thinking.
And he does it in a way that's both insightful and a little bit unsettling.
Yeah.
So to kind of set the scene, I want you to imagine that we're transported back to England in 1975.
Okay.
We're sitting in a park among a crowd of people listening to Krishnamurti delve into this whole idea of the mechanistic mind.
Okay.
He starts by arguing that a lot of our thoughts, feelings, even our reactions are often mechanical,
Hmm.
and they're driven by, past experiences, societal programming, and these deep-seated beliefs we rarely question.
Yeah.
And this isn't just about daily routines or habits.
Yep.
It goes way deeper.
He's talking about those underlying patterns of thought that shape how we see the world, how we relate to others, even our sense of self.
Yeah, it's as if we're operating from a set of pre-recorded tapes,
Right.
just playing out the same responses over and over.
Exactly.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Hello.
Krishnamurti digs into how we create images of ourselves.
Mm.
We cling to these labels and roles because it gives us this sense of security.
Yeah.
So we define ourselves as the successful entrepreneur or the caring friend or whatever label feels comfortable.
Right.
But, and here's the kicker, he says, this security is actually an illusion.
It is.
Yeah.
It's an illusion that's built on these fragile constructs,
Yeah.
words and ideas that we've come to identify with.
Right.
And the problem is when our sense of security is rooted in these images, we become afraid to let go of them.
Right.
And we cling to them even when they're not serving us anymore,
Right.
even when they're limiting our growth and preventing us from experiencing true freedom.
So we're basically stuck in this loop,
Yeah.
relying on all these external images to define who we are. It's like
Yeah.
we're constantly looking for validation,
Mm.
trying to squeeze ourselves into these boxes that other people have created.
Yeah.
But Krishnamurti suggests that there is another way.
Okay.
There's a path to break free from this mental machinery.
Interesting.
And that path, it starts with awareness. And he makes a distinction between simply being aware of our surroundings and a deeper kind of awareness,
Okay.
like an awareness of our inner landscape.
So it's about being conscious of our thoughts, our reactions,
Yeah.
even those hidden motives that are driving our behavior.
Right. It's like shining a light on those automatic responses that we usually just take for granted.
Exactly.
He doesn't stop there, though.
Oh, really?
He introduces this whole other idea of attention, which he says is different from awareness.
Okay.
I'll be honest. I really struggled with this concept at first.
Yeah, it is a bit of a subtle distinction. I
Mhm.
think of attention as like a state of complete presence.
Mhm.
It's a focused awareness, but without the filter of the observer or the ego.
Okay.
You're fully immersed in the experience without judgment or analysis, just allowing yourself to simply be.
Okay, that's starting to click a little bit.
Okay.
So if I'm understanding this correctly,
Yeah.
attention is less about thinking about our experiences
Right.
and more about directly experiencing them without all that mental chatter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this distinction is so crucial because in attention, we become free from those reactive patterns of the conditioned mind,
Oh, I see.
the ones we were talking about earlier.
So it's not about erasing our past or pretending like our past hasn't shaped us.
Right.
It's more about recognizing the influence of our past,
Yeah.
but choosing to respond in a new way.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how this could be a real game changer.
Krishnamurti uses this really powerful analogy to illustrate this shift.
Oh.
Imagine being able to observe both praise and insult without letting either one define you. They're both just external noise that doesn't have to dictate your internal state.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I know I personally tend to get caught up in what other people think about me,
Yeah.
whether it's good or bad.
We all do.
Yeah.
It's human nature.
Right.
But that's the power of attention. To witness an experience without clinging to it or resisting it.
So we're not trying to suppress our emotions.
Right.
Or pretend they don't exist.
Exactly.
We're just choosing not to be ruled by them.
Right.
And that's what frees us from that cycle of hurt and self-protection.
Exactly.
So how does this all connect to the search for security that we were talking about before?
Yeah.
You know, that security that we try to find in those external labels and images.
Well, Krishnamurti is suggesting that true security doesn't come from clinging to those external things at all. It comes from shedding them entirely and just being present in the moment exactly as we are.
That's a pretty radical idea.
It is.
But I have to say, it's also incredibly intriguing.
Yeah.
It's like he's challenging us to find a sense of security that's not dependent on anything outside of ourselves.
That's right.
We'll have to delve deeper into that next time.
Okay.
Okay. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of this.
Yeah.
So Krishnamurti is saying that true security comes from letting go of those external images and labels.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we even begin to do that?
Right.
It feels like those images are so ingrained in like who we think we are.
It's definitely a process.
Yeah.
It's not something that happens overnight.
Right.
Krishnamurti suggests that we start by kind of questioning how much of our daily lives is actually driven by those images and those pre-programmed responses.
So instead of just going through the motions,
Yeah.
we start paying attention to like why we do the things we do.
Exactly. Like, let's say you get a promotion at work.
Okay.
On the surface, you're probably excited, maybe even proud.
Right.
But if you dig a little deeper, you might notice that there's this subtle fear creeping in.
Like a fear of not living up to expectations?
Maybe.
Or fear of failure now that the stakes are higher?
Exactly. Or maybe it's a desire for external validation.
Mm.
You know, that need to prove yourself to others.
So it's about becoming aware of those deeper motives.
Right.
The ones behind our actions.
Yeah.
The often unconscious desires and fears that shape our choices. Are you saying that those motives are always tied to those external images that we've built for ourselves?
Well, not always, but they often play a role. Krishnamurti points out how we often confuse choice with freedom.
Okay.
We think we're making these free and independent decisions.
Right.
But we're actually just reacting from a place of conditioning.
So we might think we're choosing that new car because we like the features.
Yeah.
But deep down, it's about keeping up with the Joneses.
Right.
Or projecting a certain image of success.
Exactly. And it's not just about material things either. It could be like choosing a career path to please your parents, staying in a relationship because you're afraid of being alone,
Okay.
or even forming really strong opinions just to fit in with a particular group.
Okay. That's making me a little comfortable.
Yeah.
But I can see what you mean.
It's like we're constantly seeking validation and approval.
Yeah.
Trying to fit into these boxes that society or our upbringing has created for us.
And the thing is, it's not about judging ourselves for those motivations.
Right.
It's about becoming aware of them.
Exactly, because once we bring those hidden drivers into the light of awareness, then we can start to make more conscious and authentic choices.
So instead of reacting from that place of fear or need for approval,
Right.
we can pause, observe those motivations,
Yeah.
and choose a different path,
Exactly.
one that's more aligned with who we really are, rather than who we think we should be.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that those conditioned responses are just habits.
Right.
They're just patterns of thought that we can actually unlearn and rewire. And the more we practice awareness, the easier it becomes to break free from them.
That's actually pretty empowering.
Yeah.
It's like even if we've been running on autopilot for years,
Right.
we can still choose to like wake up and take control of the steering wheel.
Exactly.
But Krishnamurti didn't just talk about the individual mind, right?
Right.
He also talked about society and how it shapes our thinking.
Absolutely. He was very critical of how societal structures and institutions actually perpetuate this mechanistic way of thinking. He argued that things like our education systems, our political systems, even our religious institutions often reinforce conformity and obedience rather than encouraging independent thought and self-discovery.
I could see how that ties back to what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
if we're constantly bombarded with all these messages about how we should think,
Right.
how we should behave,
Yeah.
what we should aspire to,
Exactly.
it's no wonder that so many of us just end up on autopilot, following that pre-programmed path.
It's like we're taught to fit in rather than to stand out.
Right.
To conform rather than to question.
Right.
And that can make it really difficult to break free from that mechanistic mindset, even when we become aware of it.
So it's not just about changing our own individual thinking.
Girl.
It's about questioning the systems and structures that influence our thinking.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our minds are not these isolated entities. They're shaped by the world around us, by the culture we live in, by the messages that we're constantly exposed to.
Okay. So we've got our personal conditioning, we've got societal conditioning.
Right.
And then we have this idea that true security comes from letting go of all of it and simply being.
Yeah. And that's where Krishnamurti's insights get really revolutionary.
Okay.
He's suggesting that we don't actually need all of those external things to feel safe and secure. That true security, it comes from within.
Yeah.
It comes from a deep understanding and acceptance of ourselves exactly as we are.
But how do we get there?
Right.
How do we actually cultivate that inner security
Yeah.
in a world that's constantly telling us that we need more, that we need to be better, but we need to strive for something outside of ourselves?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll explore next.
Okay, so we've explored this whole idea of the mechanistic mind and how it keeps us kind of stuck in these predictable patterns.
Yeah.
We've talked about awareness and attention as like potential pathways to freedom.
Right.
But honestly, it all feels a bit daunting.
Yeah.
Like, how do we actually cultivate that inner security that Krishnamurti talks about?
Right.
Especially when we're surrounded by so much external noise.
It's true. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But it's not about reaching some like perfect state of awareness where you never get triggered or react automatically. It's more about just recognizing those moments when you are on autopilot and then gently nudging yourself back to a place of presence.
So it's a practice,
Yeah.
not a destination.
Exactly. It's about building that habit of paying attention, observing your thoughts and your feelings without judgment.
Right.
And just like any new habit, it takes time and effort.
Okay. That makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
But what are some concrete steps that we can take? I'm all for like the lofty concepts, but I need something actionable.
One practice that Krishnamurti emphasizes is cultivating what he calls choiceless awareness. Now, I know that sounds a bit paradoxical.
Choiceless awareness.
Yeah.
How can we be aware without choosing to be aware?
He's not saying we don't have choices.
Okay.
He's saying that true freedom lies in breaking free from that compulsion to choose, to react from that conditioned center.
Okay.
It's about stepping back from that constant stream of thoughts and desires that are telling us what to do, what to think, what to feel.
So it's about creating space.
Yes.
Between stimulus and response.
Exactly.
A space where we can observe those automatic reactions without immediately getting swept away by them.
You got it. It's like hitting the pause button on the autopilot, so we can choose a more conscious response.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that?
Well, there are lots of different techniques.
Okay.
But one that Krishnamurti often talked about was the practice of mindfulness. It could be as simple as just taking a few moments each day to sit quietly and pay attention to your breath.
Right.
Notice the sensations of your body, the sounds around you, without judging them or labeling them.
I've tried meditation before.
Yeah?
But my mind always seems to wander.
It's totally natural for the mind to wander. The key is to not get frustrated when it does.
Right.
Just gently guide your attention back to your breath or whatever anchor you're using.
It's about recognizing those thought patterns and choosing to step outside of them.
Exactly. And it's not just about formal meditation practice either. It's about bringing that same quality of attention to our everyday lives.
So like how?
Notice how you react when someone cuts you off in traffic.
Okay.
Observe the thoughts and emotions that come up when you receive criticism or praise.
So it's about becoming more aware of those pre-programmed responses that are playing out in those different situations.
Exactly. And remember that distinction between awareness and attention that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's not just about passively observing those reactions. It's about bringing your full attention to them. being fully present with them without getting caught up in the story or the drama.
And in that space of attention,
Yeah.
we have that opportunity to choose a different response.
Exactly.
One that's not driven by fear or insecurity or the need for approval.
Exactly. It's about accessing that deeper sense of self that's not defined by all those external images and labels.
Right.
And in that space, we can start to tap into this wellspring of creativity, intuition, and wisdom that's always been there, just waiting to be discovered.
This reminds me of something that Krishnamurti mentioned about like the unconditioned part of the brain.
Oh, yeah.
He seemed to be suggesting that there's a part of us that's untouched by all of that societal programming and conditioning.
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about here?
It's definitely connected. He didn't really offer a definitive explanation for this unconditioned space,
Right.
but he hinted at its potential. He suggested that it's the source of true creativity, insight, and compassion.
So it's like there's this whole other level of consciousness that's waiting to be unlocked.
Right.
A level where we're not limited by those old patterns of thought and behavior.
Exactly. And the key to unlocking that potential, according to Krishnamurti, is through cultivating awareness, attention, and that choiceless awareness that we were talking about.
Right.
It's about peeling back those layers of conditioning to reveal our true nature, our unconditioned self.
It's like we're on an archaeological dig, excavating the hidden treasures buried beneath years of societal and personal programming.
I love that analogy. And who knows what we might discover.
Right.
This deep dive has only scratched the surface of Krishnamurti's ideas.
Right.
But hopefully it sparked some curiosity in you to explore further and delve deeper into the workings of your own mind.
It certainly has for me. I started this conversation feeling a little skeptical.
Yeah.
But now I'm definitely intrigued.
That's great.
I'm going to be revisiting these concepts for sure.
Yeah.
And seeing how I can apply them to my own life.
That's the beauty of Krishnamurti's work. It's not about giving easy answers or quick fixes.
Right.
It's about inviting us on this journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
A journey that can lead to a much deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
And that's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely. It's a journey that can ultimately lead to a life of greater freedom, purpose, and fulfillment.
Well, on that note, we'll leave you to ponder all of these ideas.
Okay.
And maybe even embark on your own exploration of Krishnamurti's work.
Yeah.
Who knows? You might just discover a whole new level of awareness and freedom waiting for you.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.